In 1939, a chemist at a Midwestern paint company makes a startling discovery, one that could improve the health of millions of people. The company wants him to stick to making paint, but this man has always gone his own way. He was the grandson of Alabama slaves, yet he went on to become one of America's great scientists.
That scientist is chemist Percy Julian, who lived in Oak Park. He was a pioneer in the research of plant hormones, which led to the creation of many life-altering drugs like cortisone, steroids, and birth control pills. But despite his massive contributions, he battled extreme adversity throughout much of his life.
Director Llewellyn Smith tells his incredible story in Forgotten Genius, a documentary that was re-released for Black History Month on PBS. He joins us now. Good morning. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Fabulous to have you. Be talking to you.
Tell us, you know, his Percy Julian's history and his contributions to science have been long overlooked. Why is that, do you think?
I think it's really interesting. In the scientific world, he's very much respected, understood as being a phenomenal landmark-breaking scientist. I think that I think part of it is that he had to do his work, his most important work, working at the Glidden paint factory, because he couldn't find a laboratory or position in the university like most other white American scientists of his stature would find. You know, so the extraordinary synthesis that he did with progesterone and other compounds, he did that while working for a paint factory.
Well, we're looking. I'm sorry, we're looking at some of the video, and clearly the adversity stretched beyond anything academic or employment connected. We're seeing the firebombing of his house in Oak Park, I believe.
That's right. His house was, there was an effort to burn it down twice. You know, it had a huge impact on him and his family. And one of the things we wanted to show in the film is not just his extraordinary talents as a scientist, but also he's a human being. He reacted to that the way that many people would. He was very angry. He saw his family being threatened. He came outside with a shotgun and spent the evening with his son watching for marauders. And later on, he was very much involved in fair housing issues in Chicago area and in Oak Park. So he was a complex man with a lot of interest and a lot of interest in justice, even beyond his achievements as a scientist.
You had rare access to a lot of his archives. I'm wondering what you found in those records that people didn't know before.
I think that, first of all, the archives are tremendous in terms of what they provide in describing his scientific work. I think that, I'm not sure that that's what I really remember most is the science. He kept very extensive documents on the compounds he'd achieved. He kept very extensive documents on terms of his own relationships overseas and working with other people in Europe. And I think one of the things that's also interesting is that he sort of had created this whole sort of scientific laboratory at Glidden. The other thing that the documents show is that he was quite an extraordinary entrepreneur. He created his own company, and at one point his company was the leading provider of vitamin D, of synthetic vitamin D in the world. And vitamin D is critical, as you probably know, for livestock health. So he was doing extraordinary work that was sort of, that was not really well known. And to the earlier question about why he's not probably as well known, I think that his important work also involved industrial science. And that's not terribly, it's not seen as a really sort of kind of a sexy way of thinking about science.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at the same time, it was that work that allowed him to create these compounds on an industrial scale so they could be used more widely and available more widely.
Can shows like this help alleviate the lack of scientific literacy in this country, which transcends age, race, etc.?
You know, that's a good question. I'm really hoping so. And I've always thought that, you know, I'm not really a science maven. I'm not really, I had bad science teachers, even though I love science. But But I think that if you connect the world of science to the world of storytelling,
Yeah.
I think that's an entrance for a lot of people to really think about, you know, the kind of achievements that we see in the lives of people like Percy Julian. I think that we often think about scientists as being sort of beyond our range and sort of different from us. And once you realize in this life, and we've tried to make this clear in the film, that he's really an ordinary human being in many ways. You know, he has the same kind of fears. He loves his family. He's ambitious. When things go wrong, he gets very upset. So I think that if we can connect the idea that science is accessible, especially through the stories of people who are scientists, that may be the thing that helps to change that.
Well, it's called Forgotten Genius. It's streaming online through February 28th at pbs.org. Llewellyn Smith, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Take care.
Time now.